I just want to come with you. This topic is called "The Jesus Was the Slave Ship," and it says "Wake up" and Shalom. And I made this video recently, one of my old channels on M. Barry Scott, and yeah, this was the main one I've had. And this was one of my top videos that I have certainly most views on them. It wasn't really like the most, but it was one of the top views. So let's get right into it. It's called "The Jesus Was the Slave Ship, Wake Up." It was talking about our slavery. And this is John Hawkins and Jesus of Lubbock. That's the ship that he carried all the African slaves in the slave trade, in the Plymouth. John Hopkins of Plymouth is widely acknowledged to be the pioneer of the English slave trade. You heard that, didn't you? The pioneer of the English slave trade, because he was the first to run the triangular trade. He was the first to run the triangular trade, make a profit at every stop. In 1564, Queen Elizabeth I partnered with him by renting him the huge old 700-ton boat ship, Jesus of Lubbock, and he set forth on his second longer and more extensive voyage, along with 3 small ships. Hawkins sailed to Barbuda, or something like that, privateering along the way. By the time he reached Barbuda, he had captured around 400 Africans. After Barbuda, Hawkins sailed to Rio del Jaca, wherever you want to call it. The Spanish officials traded to prevent Hawkins from selling the slaves by imposing taxes. Captain Hawkins refused the taxes and threatened to burn the town. After selling his slaves, Captain Hopkins sailed to French colony in Florida for respite. Captain Hopkins returned to England in September 1566. His expedition, a total success as financiers, made a 60% profit. That's called them so-called Jews right there. They finance our slave trade. 60%. Yeah. Of the coast of Africa near Sierra Leone. That's where we was captured at, Sierra Leone. I remember that story in history class. Hawkins captured 350 slaves. Yeah, I remember that story when I was in history class, when I was in high school, all them 4 years ago. And 4 years later, like we said, 4 years later, probably 4 years and 5 years later, I've been out of high school for 5 years later, and then teaching the same stuff. Like now it's coming back to me all of a sudden. 400 and 500 slaves, mostly plundering the Portuguese ships, also the violence, subterfuge, promising the violent subterfuge the Africans free land, riches in the New World. He mostly sold most of the slaves in what is known as Dominican Republic. Yeah, you got some blacks in Dominican Republic. That's part of a small portion. But some of them are not our people. Most of them are not our people. You have some that are, if they're from the tribe of Judah, if they acknowledge Yahuwah. Because yes, he returned home with a profit in ships and laid ivory hides and sugar, and ivory hides and sugar, like sugar cane. Thus began the Irish slave trade. Began the British slave trade. Slovakia. British slave trade. On his return to England, Queen Elizabeth lived and assailed Hawkins, charging this endeavor was a distastable and would call down the vengeance from the heaven upon the undertakers. When Elizabeth became fully aware, however, of the profits have made during the partnership and with Hawkins, and the promise to provide him with the Jesus of Lubbock, aka Good Ship Jesus. That's what they call it. I remember that. They said that in history class, Good Ship Jesus. I saw that in one of the libraries and said that, and it shocked the mess out of me. Questions, what was our people downfall? What's our people downfall? Deuteronomy 29:26. For they went and served other gods and worshiped them. Like idolatry. There's more than that too. Gods whom they knew not, and whom he had not given unto them. That's right, Deuteronomy 29. That's what happened. We don't know nothing about no New Testament and stuff like that. FYI. We never knew the English. We never knew the English prior to being taken captive. The slave masters murdered our men in front of our women, and then told them they loved them, and that if they didn't want to see the same thing happen to their children that happened to the men, pray to Jesus. And that's how that got started. Deuteronomy 32:17. The sacrificing unto devils, not to God, to the gods whom they knew not, the new gods that came newly up, whom your fathers feared not. FYI, we were a Hebrew tongue speaking people before we fled out Jerusalem in 70 AD. You hear what this said? He said we were a Hebrew speaking tongue people before we fled out of Jerusalem in 70 AD, running in the Roman persecution. We ran into Africa, arriving the Ivory Coast of West Africa, such as Sierra Leone, Nigeria, and Ghana. That's right, those countries, Ghana. We didn't go into African parts such as Egypt, such as Africa, such as Egypt, Libya, and Ethiopia. Israelites had culture. Israelites had culture, not to mix and mingle with other nations. That's right. Not to, and I'm gonna read this again. Israelites had a culture, not to mix and mingle with other nations. So the Hamitic people, we didn't fool with. You hear that? So it says, so with the Hamitic people, we didn't fool with. We stayed in Africa for 1,300 years until the Africans got mad. The Africans got mad and conspired with the Arabs to sell us to the Europeans, like John Hawkins, who took us captive on cargo slave ships. There was no J or U. I'll read this again. There was no J or U or us sound in our Hebrew language. That's amazing. And so our people didn't know this new God named Jesus. See, the new God, Jesus was considered God, okay? The ones that teaching Yahushua, y'all teaching idolatry. Once again, Habakkuk 2:18. Y'all want to read that scripture? Look it up. So I'm reading this now. Until they force our women to learn about him and pray to him and teach their children of them. Wake up, one of the ships and that brought us here was named Jesus. Gosh. And that's another clue. Question, how did we get to America? Deuteronomy 28:68. And Yahuwah shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships, by the way whereof I spake unto thee. Thou shalt see it no more again, and there shall ye be unto your enemies for bondmen and bondwomen, and no man shall buy you or save you, whatnot. But it means no man shall buy you out of slavery. The Most High said we would come into Egypt again by the way of ships. Not literally Egypt, but spiritual Egypt. Egypt was used as a reference to bondage and slavery because in Egypt we were enslaved 430 years. The Most High is letting us know that we would go into slavery again and would be taken into slavery by ships, and we would be sold as slave men and slave women, and no man should buy us. No man should buy us meant, and no man should deliver us out of this bondage as Moses did before in Egypt. Wake up, folks. Gosh. So he said in this research I just found, and I put it on my Bible, Truth and Facts, and let y'all know. Question, When where they were brought into bondage again by the way of ships, North America, would we know their English language? Deuteronomy 28:49. Yahuwah shall bring a nation against thee from far from the end of the earth. As a swift as the eagle flieth a nation whose tongue thou shalt not understand. That's the English language. That's talking about America, known as spiritual Egypt. We were brought off the ivory coast of West Africa on slave ships to North America. The wilderness of North America, they would say in Malcolm X movie. One of the ships was called Jesus of Lubbock. So if according to prophecy, this nation's tongue wouldn't understand, and then how is Jesus our Hebrew God? If being Hebrew, we didn't understand the English tongue, wake up. Prophecy said this nation shall come from the end of the earth as a swift as the eagle flieth. Now ask yourself, is it a coincidence that America's symbol is the eagle? Now look at the map below and see North America is far. It is far from the Middle East. It's the Western Hemisphere. And from the end of the earth. Let's look at this map. Here's the map of America. Here's where we was at. We was in Jerusalem. We fled to Africa, and they gathered us in the western part. And here's how they got us. They sent us to the New World and scattered us all 50 states and the islands of whatnot. And but all this, we was in Africa and all these places in Europe. And in the Arab lands, they got us all to the west. All tribes of Judah will scatter four corners of the earth, all over the earth, four corners. In Isaiah 11:11, the rest of the tribes is still there. Cargo slave ships we came over cargo slave ships we came over in as prophecy said. We are the children of Israel. We are the children of Israel, folks. Wake up. You're not black. You have been lied to. We are Hebrews who came over to America as punishment because our foreparents didn't keep the covenant they made with the Most High. We are from Jerusalem, the Holy Land, Jerusalem, not Africa. Jerusalem is the holy city, not Mecca. You're not a Muslim. Packed on cargo slave ship like Ship Mercy, the Good Ship Jesus, the Grace Ship, the Grace of God Ship, and so forth. Packed like sardines. And here's the cargo slave ship. You ever heard the Middle Passage? Warner Brothers of House of David was talking about this. The Middle Passage, he said that's one of the worst passage. He said this is the most horrific passages of all mankind. It was one of the most atrocities passages of all mankind. I have a lot of slaves on them ships. A lot of them died, and the sharks ate us, and there was no left of us, and millions have died. It's the most brutal passage of all mankind. And there's the pictures. Here's the Jesus slave ships. As you can see, they packed us all the way down below, stacked us up, and they did that to every ship. And the Jesus slave ship. Yes, that was us. And auction block, it was prophecy. We should be sold, and there ye shall be sold unto your enemies for bondmen and bondwomen. Deuteronomy 28:68. And what they say, to be sold on the board of the ship, blah, blah, blah. And it says the healthy Negroes. Healthy Negroes, like Elder Youngman would say. The brother Elder Youngman would say. And I think this black guy right here, I made one of the videos about the Yah's last captivity of Yah'sPeople.com. This is Samuel and stuff like this. And this right here, I forget her name, is Mariah or something like that, and they were selling them. And the auctioneers and all this guy, the Edomites right here, so-called white people and all this right here. And that's what they did. They sold us all. Yeah, they did. Hebrew Israelite. Jesus was the God of the Western world. They said Jesus was the God of the Western world. Our people were forced to acknowledge him as our new God. See, Jesus was made up. And we knew nothing about him, never heard of this English man who is really Cesare Borgia, Cesare Borgia, or Borgia, or whatever you want to call him, Borgia, put up by the Catholic Church as Jesus. Wake up, folks. You think, and they said as Jesus, and there is no Jesus. They made the whole thing up. It's Yahuwah. Wake up, folks. You think they love you enough to tell us you the truth? We don't even supposed to be making mention of any Western world gods given unto us to worship. Exodus 23 and 13, and in all things that I have said unto you to be circumspect, and make no mention of the name of other gods, neither let them be heard out of thy mouth. Once you become enlightened to the truth, you can't continue to worship the Most High in ignorance by cleaving to that which is not God. They say in John 4:24, God is spirit, and they that worship him must be worshiped in him in spirit and in truth. It's time for you to start worshiping the Most High in truth, not in falsehood as you have been taught for years. And so, yeah, this is basically the slavery pictures, and the middle passage right here. It's most brutalist passages of all mankind. And yeah, the middle passage, and it's called the Jesus was the slave ship, wake up. And basically I made a video about this before, and this is basically it. So I'm going to clean up this topic, and so with that I want to say Most High bless y'all many times. All I want to say is Shalom.